What's up, everybody? Welcome to what we hopefully hope will one day become a podcast. We don't currently even have a title for it or any art or anything, which is why you're staring at the logo of my old YouTube channel instead of something specific for this. And we're also still working on a name. We have a few in mind. One of them, the one I really liked was The Table, because, you know, for me, that's kind of what Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs are all about, is table and, you know, coming around the table and talking and whatnot. But the table was used for a few things that we were worried that might not work out well. And then, you know, it's like, all right, well, then there's the story table, but then that sounds kind of like a library kids book sort of. And so we'd love some ideas. If you guys have some ideas that you'd like to throw at us so we can completely ignore and go in a totally different direction, feel free to leave that in the comment section down below. Probably going to do this weekly. If it explodes and, you know, we become bigger than Joe Rogan, then we may do it daily, but, you know, that's in the future. This week and probably in the future, I'm joined by Lost.
Hello, hello.
Hopefully the audio is good. I did a quick check and got it going, so I'm hoping it's well. And you may hear one or both of our dogs in the background. We'll just have to deal with it. So, but this is going to be going up in the new channel, the Tabletop RPG channel, which also doesn't have a name yet. I was going to call it TTK Tabletop TTK TTRPG. But I was informed that was too many characters, and
I think you just proved our point for us.
Yeah, well, eat a dick. So originally, you know, when my YouTube was at the height of its career, I had plans for the TDK brand, but they crashed and burned, much like Chernobyl. So that, as someone pointed out, that brand really doesn't exist anymore. So might as well just start over from scratch. And hurtful as that is, it is kind of a good point. So we'll see. But yes, we're basically, this channel and this podcast are mainly going to be discussing tabletop RPGs, reviewing them, discussing them, showing you guys the books that I'm addicted to buying, artwork, things like that. And then to a lesser degree, we may even talk about sci-fi books and fantasy books, which is another one of my hobbies. So I don't know, that I'm trying to keep this channel as a narrow focus, so that makes me think that doing books would need to be on another channel. So I don't know. I have too many ideas for the time that I have, so we're just gonna go with this as it is for now and see where we end up. So, Lost, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with tabletop games and how long you've been doing them?
Sure. So I picked up TTRPGs just before I entered college, really.
And how many years ago was that?
Not as long as you.
Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate you throwing that in.
You're welcome. Probably, what is it now? 6-7 years of play in various systems. My friend and I started with 3.5 edition of Dungeons and Dragons. We moved on traditionally to 5th edition. I've done some dabbling in various other things like GURPS and a few other more hero-based systems, and then also things like Warhammer with their Rogue Trader, and more recently Wrath and Glory and Aliens.
So you're kind of a grizzled veteran, so to speak.
I have enough to talk comfortably.
Fair enough. Well, I'm basically the exact opposite. Dungeons and Dragons. Oddly enough, when I was growing up, Dungeons and Dragons was something my mother thought was evil and the devil's work, and, you know, something the kids at Harvard drug poor innocent people down to the catacombs to do horrible satanic shit on. And so I was not allowed to partake in that as a growing youth. But as I got older and I got more into books and such, you know, it was something that was always interesting to me. But you know, it's not a single player game by any means, so you have to find other people to play with. And I just never really had friends that were into it. And then when I started YouTube, people recommended it. And I don't know, it was something I was interested in, but there were so many other things going on at the time. It wasn't until COVID kicked off that, it really made me think this would be kind of cool because, I can't leave my house ever. So, started it off with Lost in his group as kind of a one-off joke thing, and then it kind of grew from there, and then I kind of got interested in the books and really kicked myself for... I had a bunch of the old school D&D rule books that I got at a garage sale for like $5. And then when we moved recently, I mean like a year and a half ago, I had a box full of books, and most of them were paperbacks, but I had 10 of those hardbacks. And I was just like, nah, throw them away. And then like now I'm like, those were worth like $200 a piece, you idiot. So yeah, that kind of hurts, but oh well, it is what it is. So now I'm acquiring them $160 purchase when my wife's not looking at a time. And hoping that the dog doesn't chew them up until I get a bookshelf, because right now I keep them right next to my bed so I can read them, which is my worst nightmare. My wife actually had a nightmare about my dog chewing up all of my tabletop RPG books, which is kind of humorous because I would think I would be the one that would be more concerned about it than she is, but apparently she's losing sleep over it. So but yeah, I bought Warhammer's Wrath and Glory. I bought the expansion for one of the expansions for that, which I think was, they've got one coming out first quarter of next year, and then one that's out now, and I forget, I think it's Forsaken System that's out now. And then
you have Forsaken System.
Yeah, and then the one that comes out, I don't know if the one that's out, I think the one that's out now, it talks about, because I haven't opened it yet. I mean, I've opened it, but I haven't read it. It's about the Gilead system, but I think the next one is about Space Hulks, which is just amazing. I mean, like the Warhammer universe it always blows me away because, I'm going to get off on a tangent here, so I have to be careful, otherwise we'll lose like 2 hours. But growing up, I hated reading. Like, it was literally a punishment that my mother would give me when I was bad. It was like, go to your room and read. And I'm like, oh, come on, and then she'd throw Reader's Digest at me and make me read, and I hated it. Well, we moved when I was 12, and all of my friends were across town. So when you're 12, 3 miles of distance might as well be another state, because you're never going to be able to see those people again outside of when your mom decides to drive you, which is never. So my brother had friends, like he had like all these 7 and 8 year olds that he was able to run around with. But when you are 12 and your brother's friends are 7 and 8 year olds, the 7 and 8 year olds tend to get really beat up, and then they don't like to play with you anymore. So I ended up not having a lot of friends. This was before the internet. So the one good thing was we had a library across the street, literally. Like, the Flower Mound Library at that time was a 1-room, well, no, it was like a 3-room maintenance building next to a park, and the park was across the street. And so we're talking a 2-lane road in my subdivision that I could walk across, and there was a book, there was an army of books. And I didn't like reading, but I was competitive. And so my mom took us over there once, and summer had just started. I was bored out of my mind, and they had just started a reading competition. And my mom was like, okay, well, maybe we can get him into this. So she was going to sign me up for the reading competition. And of course, I didn't want to do it. And then there was a little girl there sitting on the counter. And when my mom was signing up, she just kind of laughed. She's like, you don't even need to bother signing up, because I've won it the last 3 years running. And at that point, reading became my entire life. And that summer, I read it was either 157,000 or 175,000 pages. I don't remember which. I used to have it written down, and there was a plaque and all that stuff, when you're growing up, those things are important. But as you get older, they kind of disappear and get lost. But I literally read every single Hardy Boys book that summer, the hardbacks, the paperbacks, the new version, the old version, every Nancy Drew, every Choose Your Own Adventure. I mean, like, I devoured their entire young adult fiction section to the point that they couldn't keep up with me. And I had to move to adult fiction. I read every Stephen King novel, every R.L. Stine novel, everything. I mean, and then, you know, when you're young, you pick up things faster. So I got to the point where I could read a 300, 400 page book in like 2 hours. And so I'm just devouring books. And due to that, went off on that tangent to basically say that science fiction and stuff like that has always intrigued me. And I get into this point where I can see it's like a movie in my head. My brother can't do that, but like for me, if I'm reading a book, after like 2 or 3 sentences, I stop reading, and to me, it's like I'm watching a movie, if that makes sense. So when I get into these tabletop RPG things, it blows my mind because it's the idea. It's something that I can think about. You know, I used to love Star Trek because one of my favorite Star Trek episodes was the one where all the universes collided and you had like 50 different enterprises all next to each other, and then they were going to reset the timeline, and one of them attacked and was like, no, we won't go back. The Borg have taken over everything. You don't understand. I won't go back. And it was just the idea that, holy shit, that universe exists somewhere. It's fully fleshed out. That is somebody's life, you know? And then you start looking at all the characters that you know and love in the current Star Trek and think about what they would be like in that other universe. And it's like, I want more of that universe. How do I get more of that universe? Or like Terminator. It's like, I don't give a fuck about modern day. I want to see the Terminators annihilating humanity just because I find that stuff fascinating. But you can't, there's no book on it, you know, and unless I want to write the book myself, you can never explore that stuff. But with tabletop stuff, you can explore those type of things. It gives you the ability to set your own storyline, your own adventure, and go off and, I mean, obviously it's stuff you've made up, but you still get to explore that stuff. And that's an amazing opportunity for somebody like me who spends most of the time fantasizing shit in their head. So I don't know, maybe that makes me weird and an outlier, but I think that's a great part of the whole tabletop stuff. So,
and I think that's part of the draw to the whole thing in general is you get to create this world as a group. Sure, it's not the same as, you know, telling it by yourself, but if you're telling it by yourself, you just go, you know, that's kind of what writers do.
Yeah.
This is more for those of us who are like, hey, this will be fun if I got a group of people together and said, let's tell a story, see what happens.
Well, and that's the cool part about it is, you know, like, I can fantasize all day long and live this out in my head, but when you add players to it, they go off in places you don't even think about and kind of force you to flesh out that world in a way that you might not have before. And it's just fascinating. And then, like, you know, Warhammer has so much, and I'm just using that as one example, but Warhammer has so much content. I mean, I'm sure Dungeons and Dragons does as well, because I mean the game's been around for like what, 25 years, 30 years now. Holy shit, 40 years. God, I'm getting old. The 70s, right? 73, 75?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember the exact date.
So that's almost 50 years now. Jesus.
1974, yeah.
So, you know, when you look at things with that much story, it's just, you know, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure we've all seen a movie or a TV show that ends and then, like, you never get a sequel. And it's like, dude, I want more. I want to know where that goes. And Dungeons and Dragons and these games give you that opportunity to explore more of that stuff. And I think that's what I find so fascinating. And I think that's why I'm going to end up with so many books, but only play a small portion of them, is my appetite for the content is going to outpace my ability to play the content, which is sad and frustrating in its own right. But yeah, today we want to talk about a specific topic, and it's a problem that we had in our first D&D session really bad, and even more so in our secondary campaign, I think, where when you're making characters in these campaigns, you kind of have an option to either make your characters in a limbo where it's like, okay, guys, and COVID doesn't help for this, but it's like, all right, guys, go make your characters. We're going to start a new campaign this weekend. And then everybody goes off, they make their characters, they decide what they want to do and what they like, and then everybody shows up and you start playing, and then 9, 10, 12, 15, sessions in, and all of a sudden, your cleric who's decided to make friends with a barghast who eats human souls and destroys the world, and the paladin who finds a barghast as an affront to his entire existence are now in a tug of war on the party to decide what the hell is going on. And the cleric's like, I don't understand, this guy's awesome, he can destroy our enemies and help us on our mission, and the paladin's like, I don't understand you, this thing eats fucking souls and it's an abomination. And to an extent that can be role played out, but at a certain point, you're not going to be able to get along with Hitler if you're a normal person, and some things just break. And I don't know, because I've never read the D&D core rulebook, so you'll have to let me know about this, Lost. But one of the really nice things I find about the Warhammer universe, and to an extent the Aliens universe, is the way they cover that. In Warhammer, they call it the framework. Before you even make your characters, you create a framework, and the framework decides what your party is. And it's we're going to be good guys, we're going to be bad guys, we're going to overarch focus on this, and blah 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 blah. And then once you have your framework set up, you plug characters into the framework. And if a character won't fit in the framework, you put it on the side, and it's like, all right, that's a great idea for a character, I like that. It's not going to fit the framework for this mission or this campaign or this one shot or whatever the hell you want to call it. We're going to put it on the side and we'll do it later, but find something that will fit this framework. And I think that keeps that pull from happening. In Aliens, if you go off the rails, like we had one character literally walk away from our party. If you do that in Aliens, your character just dies. Well, it doesn't die. It's taken over by the DM, right?
Yeah, it becomes an NPC. Well, in cinematic play, where everything's set up, your character becomes an NPC. Sorry, that character has chosen no longer to work with the party. They've turned traitor, or something's happened. And that's kind of it. You could separate and be like, hey, I'm going to go do this task, and you're fine. But anytime you decide that your personal agenda in a cinematic story has gone so far dramatically opposed to what the rest of the group is working towards, that you're out. In a campaign, it's a little looser. It allows for a bit more forgiveness there, and allows for, players to maybe work that scenario out. But that's one of the selling points of the Alien series is, hey, we have these cinematic stories where it's that compact version where it's like, all right, you're in it, here's your stuff, work with it. Yeah. So it allows for the GM to kind of impose a controlled limitation on the group so that the players have characters that already know each other, already will work together until they drive them apart.
Or kill them in an acid explosion and ricocheting bullets.
Yeah.
I'm still a little salty about that. So does D&D have something like that? I haven't read the rule book.
So D&D by itself doesn't. What D&D really relies on is they basically say, you make your character with DM approval, and then it's the DM's job to take all of these disparate threads and tie them together and basically weave them together into a beautiful tapestry. And then
so it's your fault. Okay, got it.
And then say, hey, play on my rug, and pray they don't all bring matches and light it on fire immediately.
Fair enough.
So it's D&D relies on the concept that the group is going to build characters that want to work with everyone else. And that's why a lot of D&D players, not everyone, but a lot of D&D players, as you kind of examine the web of various groups and stuff, will recommend something called a Session Zero, which is really designed for people to create the characters all at the same time and kind of throw those ideas back and forth to hopefully work some of those kinks out. It's challenging with certain groups because those groups go, I don't know yet, I'll figure it out, and don't have ideas for characters at those moments, even when you say, hey, have 3 weeks, build a character, and kind of come to the Session Zero to talk about it. And really,
as a player that's kind of seat of the pants myself, I kind of understand that. I don't know. For me, I always look at it from the standpoint of the party's the family, and no matter what, you're a family, so you're together. And I don't know. For the frustrating part for me, it seems like not all players kind of agree on that platform. And I mean, I can understand it because they're playing their character over, I guess, the party aspect, but I don't know. I've always felt like the party is just, and maybe that's just my naivety, but I've always focused on just the party being the party, and that's, you're stuck together, you know, for better or worse. You don't get to pick your family. This is who you've got. Deal with it. And I guess everybody has their own ways of dealing with it. Not always the way you'd like.
Right, yeah. And of course, there's the age-old argument of, you know, you can't necessarily pick your blood, but you can pick those you live with, right?
Right.
And so it's really the responsibility there is it's like, and it's kind of something we saw happen or we would have seen happen as like a character goes through an arc with the players and realizes, yeah, I built this character. This character is a cool character, but he doesn't fit this group. So he's going to go off and do his own thing and he's going to leave. That's the nature of life, and that kind of is how D&D is supposed to also work. This is a group that has banded together to survive a fantastic world. Sometimes they're heroes, sometimes they're misfits that have just banded together for survival. Sometimes you're all prisoners that have just broken out, and it's better to go on the run with a group of 5 than just by yourself.
Yeah, sure.
And so it really becomes one where, well, other games say, we're locking you into this role. They go, you're free to figure it out, and if you don't figure it out, have them leave. True. And so it's a positive and a negative in that aspect, where it's the D&D system is very hands-off on the group as a whole. They provide individual plot points when you're playing some of their stories. They will say, hey, maybe the group has been drawn here to investigate this, and one member is part of this alliance or that alliance or what have you. But it doesn't say, hey, make all your players pick one alliance and work at it, because that's not how they want their stories told.
Well, and that makes sense too. I mean, there's benefits to the hands-off side of things as well. You know, it's kind of like regulation versus unregulation. You know, both sides have their benefits and drawbacks, and I think as new players, that's been a kind of a struggle for us because, you know, we're learning the rules, we're learning how the game works, we're coming in with our own preconceptions of how things should be, and then, you know, you throw in your own humanity, so to speak, where you've got your own, I want to do it this way, I want to do it that way, and then, you know, the party's like, well, I want to do it this way, I want to do it that way, and it can be trying at times, but I think that's, I don't know, and you know, one of the guys we play with, Lax, he likes it if everything's completely 100% railroaded, and I'm not quite that hardcore. Like, I can understand knowing, you know, where you're going, or having a clear objective or a path is a good thing, but I don't necessarily want everything played out the whole way for me. You know what I mean?
Right. And that was something that we were kind of working with the Alien one shot. Granted, it was slightly slower due to all of us being new at it. But I was able to give y'all, hey, you are focused on escaping. Whatever that's going to rely, and y'all are going to work your way there. You know you need these key cards. You know you need this. where everything exactly is, you're not certain, and how you get there is going to allow for a couple of different routes. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get one of these key cards, and you're trying to get away from here.
Yeah, and I liked that. I really did enjoy, having that clarity. At the same time, inevitably we ended up with that horrible decision where, okay, if we go over there, it's gonna suck, and if we go over there, it's gonna suck. What direction do we want to go? And at least the default version of Alien is a little different than kind of what I expected. Like, I expected a combat-oriented game, but, at least the default version, it's not really a combat game. It's more of a kind of like Alien Isolation. Your goal isn't to fight the alien and kill the alien, triumph over the alien. It's more avoid the alien, escape, live to fight another day, dust off, nuke the place from orbit. And I'm curious, and I've only read...
That would actually depend on what framework we were playing in. The Hadley's Last Hope scenario is a primarily stealth-based scenario. Your character's resigned for that story to have to sneak around, not having well-equipped gear, not having the tools to fight an alien invasion.
Right.
This is one of the first real times that this species is encountered, especially by, normal humans.
Right.
And so...
And that was kind of my question there, is I've only read a little bit of Colonial Marines, which is the expansion, or what do you call that when they release another book?
An expansion would be an acceptable term for that if it's not a specific adventure. I mean, for that'd be they're just fleshing out the framework, really. So it's I'd say expansion's accurate because it's the Colonial Marines expansion.
Yeah, and I think the Colonial Marines expansion would add more combat-oriented options, not only against other, humanoids and such, but also against the Xenos. And I think that could be really cool, following around a grizzled group of Marines over, the course of a couple deployments. They lose a few folks, you get a couple green newbies in, the grizzled unacceptance of the hardcore vet. You're not going to last 10 minutes here, newbie, and don't use that locker. That was so-and-so's locker. You haven't earned that right yet. To, surviving together, coming together as a team again. I think that could be cool over a course of several sessions, if done right.
Fair enough. That can be something we look into.
Yeah. We gotta finish? We're about halfway through that one shot, maybe.
I'd say about halfway, because you have allowed the aliens to know of your still surviving presence, and so y'all are now very much on a clock.
Oh boy, I don't like the sound of that at all.
Where before you probably could measure it in several shifts worth of time, which is 15 hours or so, you're going to be rapidly running out of time.
Yeah, well, once the difficulty with the key cards was what was driving me nuts, because it was like, if we go to the armory, we can gear up, we might be able to fight better. Oh, there's an alien right there. Okay, let's get the key. Oh, there's an alien right there. I felt the aliens finding you was probably almost guaranteed.
Any of the alien, you were eventually going to find an alien or two as you went through it. That face hugger actually managed to detect y'all when y'all first came through. It was just living in C1. But y'all left, and it was only really as you were coming back and making noise that it started pursuing you, that y'all actually realized it was in that section. The scout that you met up by the armory was idling up there. And so if y'all had never gone up by the armory, you had said, nah, the command area is locked off. We don't have access. Forget it. And moved on. It would have just stayed there. It would have just idled. And so they have been kind of like chess pieces on a board placed to create these traps that if y'all explore too much, you risk running into the horrors that are here.
Right.
But at the same time, they don't want you to not explore, because that's kind of part of what's supposed to drive the tension is as you move through these empty areas, knowing that something is here and something has caused this devastation, as you've seen on the sub-level.
Yeah, I think we're honestly dead at this point, because the two that ran, it's going to be really hard to get them focused again. And if we don't luck out in the med bay, I think we're pretty much doomed, especially now that the pulse rifle's dry. We've only got, what? I've got to pick up I literally have now almost all of the weapons, minus one pistol, I think. Because I got to go pick up the incinerator, if I remember to. Hopefully I remember to.
One pistol was lost in the dissolving body. And so now the flamethrower needs to be retrieved. You have a pistol and the empty.
No, I didn't have a pistol on him. I only had.
I thought you got handed one by Sig.
We were gonna take one, and then no, Sig handed the robot the pistol. So all what's his name had was the blowtorch and the incinerator. When I got tackled, I dropped the incinerator, so it's right there in the door.
Got it. So
and
you
then
lost the blowtorch.
Yeah, the blowtorch is probably gone. But yeah, we have one dry pulse rifle, two pistols only, but I don't know about the other pistol because it's the pilot's hidden special, prison wallet weapon.
Fair enough.
And then we've got a couple rounds with the incinerator. So hopefully, we basically have one decent weapon among the four of us now, and a robot who thankfully is on our side. It'll be interesting. For those of you guys who'd like to see that, we'll be doing that Saturday at 3 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/pyrostasis. It's going to be hopefully the finale of that show. And then the following week, I don't think we've decided what we're doing yet. We may go back to Warhammer. Or if there's a Colonial Marines one shot, I wouldn't mind doing that. Because I think that motion detector, that is quite possibly one of the coolest things I've seen yet in a tabletop RPG.
Absolutely, it's a very nice touch that they built it in, that I can move the token and y'all can see it move as it moves throughout the game.
Yeah, and later on with Colonial Marines, when I'm assuming we engage and you see multiples coming, that's going to be insane. That's going to be just it's going to make for some great moments. Some absolutely great moments. So, chat, what do you guys think about character development and specifically creating your characters? Do you like creating it in a vacuum? Do you like creating them with kind of like the Warhammer framework in mind, where you kind of create the party and then plug characters into the holes that the party needs? Or do you like to just screw it, we're all going to make our own ideas up and then try and come together and make it mesh? And I think both ways have their benefits. Like the framework system, I think you're going to reduce inter-party conflict, but you might have a little less role-playing opportunities there. But at least you're not going to have situations with kind of like where we had in our first one, where a paladin and a barghast have to work together for the same goal while they hate each other. So what do you guys think? Would love to see your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, if there's any tabletop oriented thoughts, debates, long held, topics you'd like discussed, let us know in the comment section. We're definitely looking for talking points and things to debate about. We'll probably add people and subtract people as time goes on from the podcast. I was hoping to have Kwanian on this weekend, but he had to go meet his meth dealer, so he was busy. But maybe next week. That being said, I think unless Lost has anything else he wants to throw out, that's a good stopping spot.
I'll see you next week.
All right. Well, thanks for watching or listening. Hit that like button if you liked this content. Please leave a comment in the comment section to help fight the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell so you don't miss out on any of these in the future. And we'll catch you guys in the next clip.